cooking fairies yesterday for our trip. Kind of decided where we're going to be.
We just canceled it.
Yeah. Well, we're going over from Portland, and then we'll end up on the North Island a week later. And we are going from there to LA. It's like a 10 plus hour trip.
On the fair.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's not too bad.
Good.
We're on our way east.
It's 10:30. Couldn't find her. She's disappeared. She'll be back. I'd rather her sit with them if we're going to start. We'll go ahead and start in just a minute, but I'll get her started.
This is filling up her water bottle.
Oh, okay. It's 10:30.
What's this water color?
Maybe she's gone to the bathroom or something. She's not there. We're doing it inside. Thank you, Jose Luis. Thank you very much. Well, good morning, folks. My name is Bert Meek. I'm going to be your worship associate this morning. This Sunday, May 21st, we had a blue moon, for those of you who noticed this morning, and I guess this evening too. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tucson. Both all of you here and all of you watching us from afar. Today's service is going to be lay-led, so you're actually going to see 5 of us contributing. There'll be Greg Bettinger, Watercolor Go Lightly, Bob Gordon, Esther Roth, and myself. Each of us will give personal reflections on how our country's wars have impacted us and the importance of stressing the pursuit of peace. Our Reverend Jamili Omar is preaching at Mountain Vista this morning, UU, as part of the Baja 4 Pulpit Exchange. She'll be back here in 2 weeks on June 14th. So, before I forget, please silence your cell phones. Also, equally, if not more important, we have 3 bathrooms in this building, 2 that are gender specific, right in the foyer. One that is gender open, all genders, and is fully accessible. So, next slide for me. Thank you. As part of our commitment to creating a space that honors and nurtures everyone, we pledge to uphold each of the 7 Unitarian Universalist core values. That's the flower over there. And each of the 8 principles. I tried to find something that showed all 8. It just shows the original 7, but I put the 8th there on the bottom. These are values that bind us together as a community as we try to bring out the very best in each of us. When our country, or whether any country, is at war, many of these beliefs are challenged or shattered. Just look at what's happening today in Iran. The lives of 13 soldiers killed by Iranian drones because U.S. bases were completely unprotected are written off as a small price to pay. The lives of more than 120 Iranian children killed in their school by one American missile strike are not even acknowledged. The humanity of people labeled as the enemy is ignored, with threats to destroy an entire civilization. Peace requires us to see their humanity, to see the worth and the dignity in every individual. As stewards of the earth, one of the things that stresses up there, we are dismayed by the environmental destruction that this war and other wars have caused, damage that will last for decades. A point that we make each morning here, because of the times we now live in. On Sunday mornings only, the sanctuary where you all are now, the social hall across the wall, our parking lots, our children's classrooms are open to all, without invitation, open to the public. Now, in contrast, we have labeled specific offices and rooms throughout the campus as private, even on Sunday mornings. Private offices are labeled. You see the big yellow and black signs. To all of you, you are welcome to any of these private spaces that you want. However, this welcome that I extended to you is not extended to law enforcement officers, including ICE. They may not enter these private spaces unless they show us first an official, judicially signed warrant. So, if at any point this morning you don't feel safe, you are welcome to go any of those private spaces. Don't hesitate to do that. As we worship today, let us always be mindful of those desert people who were here first and whose land was stolen by successive acts of displacement and genocide. So we honor the O'odham, the Yaqui, and the Apache. We also honor the Hohokam and the many other ancient indigenous peoples whose names we no longer know. We say their names every Sunday for each service because we refuse to forget. We will not whitewash the true history of this land where we now live, where we now worship, as we strive to be in right relationship with all of life's children. So as we move more deeply into the space of worship, please know that we value each of you for what you bring to us today. This message doesn't come just from me, it comes from everybody in our congregation. We carry close to our hearts the commitment to strive to become as varied as the blooms on the Sonoran Desert. And as part of our drive to advance UU's 8th principle up there, we want to build a diverse and multicultural community because that's part of the way we value all that you bring to us. So, whatever ethnic background you claim, whether you walked or rolled or skipped or did cartwheels, any way you came into this building, you are welcome. Whomever you love, wherever you are in your spiritual path, we welcome you. Whatever your immigration status is, however you identify your gender, and in whatever way you choose to express that gender, you are welcome here. So we extend our hand of welcome to any new visitors. Now, if you're new to UUCT and you're willing, if you would you please raise your hand so we can recognize you? Oh, there we go. Thank you for being so brave. I hope you'll come back. You enjoy this, and I hope you'll come back again. Great.
Good morning. Good morning. Peace. That's an elusive concept, much discussed in history and to this current day. but it's a concept that I don't believe I've witnessed in my lifetime as a reality, at least not on a large scale. Think of our country, America. Have we ever truly been at peace at home, or without being involved in some conflict or intervention in various parts of the world? While it's been elusive on the global scale, has it been any easier to find peace on the local level? Are we without conflict? Are we at peace? Our service today is Pieces of Peace, personal reflections shared by members of our congregation, words that we hope may inspire you, though they may also bring back some painful and personal memories for you. Both and is a possible outcome today. Reverend Jamili asked last Sunday, is war ever justified? Is there such a thing as a just war? The first time I thought anything remotely like such a deep question was I was a first grader attending Turnagain Elementary School in Anchorage, Alaska. It was 1956. The general that had led Allied troops to victory in World War II was president. And from my very narrow perspective as a 6-year-old, questions like this were actually well beyond my capacity to hold, let alone formulate an answer. I don't recall that anyone in my small circle was asking such questions of themselves, that circle being my parents, my teachers, and my fellow first and second graders. But sometime during that school year, Russian bombers started flying near the western Alaska coastal areas, only a few hundred miles from our home in Anchorage. Like many of you, at least in my generation, we started with the duck and cover exercises, though even to a first grader that seemed pointless. We'd all seen the pictures of exploding nuclear bombs, impossible to imagine escaping those blasts. But in Anchorage, those in charge developed a panic-based plan in the event of incoming Russian airplanes for the school children to walk quickly to the nearest train tracks where they'd be met by a passenger train and whisked away to Seward, a mere 100 miles or so away. Parents, on the other hand, would be left to make their way from Anchorage to Seward to reconnect with their kids, however they could get there. And that's assuming that the bombers hadn't yet arrived overhead and obliterated our city. We practiced this walk from school to the tracks once or twice before it retreated into history. But it didn't retreat from my memory, not at all. And it was during this frightful and unsettled period in my life that I think I first asked the question, why can't people just get along? It seemed so simple at that age to imagine it actually happening someday, peace. I've since found some little comfort in learning that Rodney King also asked that same question back in 1991 in Los Angeles. So it was just a mere 10 years later for me, while in high school, that the undeclared Vietnam War was emerging more fully in the daily news. And by the time I graduated in 1968, being drafted into service and sent to fight and die in a war I couldn't comprehend was a very real possibility. I tried a year of junior college and was granted a student deferment. But my dislike for more school after struggling through high school brought that deferment to an end. And by 1969, with lottery number 54, I was short on options. Seeking conscientious objector status was a non-starter for me. No religious background, no pacifist background. And my draft board in the nearby Navy shipyard town of Bremerton, they made it pretty clear when I asked the clerk, Wilma Bode, about getting information on CO status. Her reply to me, which is just ingrained in my mind, "Oh, honey, we don't let people file for that here in Bremerton. It's just not right." Draft resistance activists provided other avenues for avoidance, from protests and arrests to running away to Canada. But many of those options were either deemed illegal or not widely condoned or supported, especially in my family. There were, however, a handful of sympathetic doctors aligned with the anti-war movement, and carrying a letter from one of those doctors to my pre-induction physical indicating I continued to suffer from childhood asthma, resulted in an interview with the Army doctor who was tasked with making the fit for service assessments. Bluntly and without emotion, he looked at me and he said that he could offer me a medical deferment if that was what I wanted. Or he could still move my induction forward in spite of the letter. My choice. I chose the medical deferment, a one-wise status that would only get me drafted in the event of a declared war. And given that Vietnam was never a declared war, it was just a conflict, the threat of being drafted retreated from my daily list of worries. Peace, however, for me, continues to remain elusive. So today, as we move more fully into worship, I ask that you hold what you witness and hear today, these memories and challenges. Hold them with care and respect, without judgment, but with compassion for those of us who are sharing our stories and for those that have had similar experiences. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning. For the chalice lighting, we're using the words of Elizabeth McMaster, and I'm going to do the Spanish first. I will say a line, and then you will repeat it after me, and then we'll do the English together. Encendemos la llama de nuestro cáliz. Encendemos la llama de nuestro cáliz para iluminar el mundo que buscamos. Para iluminar el mundo que buscamos. En la búsqueda de la verdad, en la búsqueda de la verdad, que seamos justos. Que seamos justos. En la búsqueda de la justicia, en la búsqueda de la justicia, que mostremos amor. Y amando, que encontremos paz. And then together, please, we light our flaming chalice to illuminate the world we seek. In search for truth, may we be just. In search for justice, may we be loving. And in loving, may we find peace. So it's 1961. I turned 18, and I registered for the military draft, which was a requirement for all male residents in the United States at that time. Spring 1963, as an idealistic college sophomore with a student deferment, I had decided that I wanted to seek official conscientious objector, CO, status that Greg mentioned. I did not believe that it was right to kill another human being, and I wanted no part of officially sanctioned violence. I began work on the 12-page application. At that time, to qualify to be a conscientious objector, you had to be opposed to war in any form based on religious, moral, or ethical beliefs. Political, sociological, or personal codes were explicitly excluded. In other words, opposition to a particular war, Vietnam at that time, would not qualify. This had to be a deeper belief than a specific political one. Furthermore, one's beliefs had to relate to a supreme being. This was changed later, but too late for me. In 1963, CO status was awarded almost exclusively to members of the peace churches, that is, Quakers, Mennonites, and Church of the Brethren. Now, I didn't qualify. Given all the above, I worked to mold my beliefs into something that could be called God, per the advice I got from the Central Committee on Conscientious Objection, which was a committee operated by the Quakers in Philadelphia. I said that my God was loving kindness, inspiration, creativity, and dedication. And I explained in detail how each of those I used the word divine on their advice, how each of those divine forces was manifested in my life, and thus leading me to my opposition to war based on moral or ethical beliefs, as per the requirement. At the same time, I was applying for and was accepted into a year-long program for foreign students to study at the University of Madrid for the following year. On the advice of the Central Committee, I waited to turn in my CO application until after my year abroad, because I needed the permission of my local draft board to leave the country. Anybody of draft age needed official permission to leave the country. And they said draft boards will not react kindly to conscientious objectors when you ask permission to go study in Spain. So I waited until I returned to the States in 64, submitted my application to my Philadelphia area draft board. I waited impatiently for their response. It didn't come. Again, on the advice of the Central Committee, I never contacted the draft board. I had the luck to be under the jurisdiction of a large draft board in a highly populated urban area, and rather than have to deal with my application, they were probably just ignoring it for the moment. As long as I wasn't too idealistic, I had escaped. In 1965 or 66, student deferments were eliminated for graduate students, which I was at that time, except in critical areas, and my field, Spanish, was not considered critical. Still, I heard nothing. By 68, nearly all deferments were ended, and in 69, a lottery was established, random lottery, based on birth dates. I got a really high number, virtually guaranteeing me that I wouldn't be drafted, and then I turned 26 later that year. My obligation ended. I joyfully burned my draft card. As a result of my privilege, that is, as an undergraduate college student and then a graduate student, and then as a person with the ability to fill out a very challenging 12-page application, and of luck, where I lived, and a random lottery, I was able to avoid the draft, thus not being forced to bear arms and possibly kill another human being. One of the results of this experience is that I lost nearly all the patriotism I had for this country. I did not then, and do not now, feel much loyalty to a country that wanted me to go against my own moral creed, possibly to destroy human life rather than nurture or cherish it. And finally, I want to refer to this morning's email blast. When it described the service, it talked about how our commitment to peace led us to embrace UU values. I don't disagree with that, but I would say in my case it was the other way around. My UU values led me to be a pacifist.
I was thinking about what he was saying more so than thinking about what I was supposed to be doing. Would you join me in song? This song is new to you. It's a simple AABA, think early Beatles kind of song. I'll sing a verse, you sing a verse. I'll sing the bridge, you sing a verse. Would you rise as you're able? There's a little fountain of peace. I'm going to sing the verse. This is my turn. 1, 2, ready. And there's a little fountain of peace in my heart, in my heart. There's a little fountain of peace in my heart. Water so sweet to taste, may it lend a little more grace, make the world a little happier place in my heart. Your turn. There's a little fountain of peace in your heart.
So, I was 19 in the year 1970, to tie in exactly what Bob was talking about. I was a few years behind him. So as a male in the United States, I was required to register for the draft. That was the summer between my freshman and sophomore years in college, the second year that the lottery had been held, at least for those young men of my age. The lottery, those of you who aren't familiar, would randomly assign numbers to every single day of the year. The lottery for my birthday was number 84. Well, when the draft began in 1969, the military needed to draft all the way through 125 to get the young men they needed to continue the Vietnam conflict. But I wasn't worried. I had the security of student deferment. They had removed the grad student deferment before that, but I was an undergrad. I was sure I had nothing to worry about. Well, that security vanished the following year when student deferments were phased out. And because the government realized that student deferment college was biased towards young men with money for college and families that supported that, and they were drafting more often men of color, men with less money, those were more vulnerable, and they saw the inequity of that, which I got. Now, the same summer, 1971, that student deferments ended, I got a call from my dad. He announced that he would no longer pay anything towards my college tuition. It was only several years later when I found out what had been going on. He had been fired by the company he worked for when they discovered that he was running an elaborate scheme to defraud them. My father's business ethics, however, are a story for another time. An interesting story, but not relevant to this case here. So anyway, at age 20, for the first time in my life, I was confronted by forces which profoundly impacted my life and my future and were completely outside of my control. I didn't know if I could afford to continue at the college, and I was now vulnerable to be drafted. However, I was fortunate. My college was wonderful, offered me loans and scholarship money, so I could remain there, and more importantly, I was never called up. When I did the research for this presentation, I was trying to figure, they went well past my number. Why didn't I get called? Why wasn't I summoned? And my best guess is it was governmental disorganization for that window of time that I was eligible, because the draft was abolished the following year. So everyone who had a 1972 number was not drafted. So, but when I think about it, if people had tried to teach me how to kill another human being, I really shudder to think what would have happened to me. I would not be the person you see before you now. Now, I know other men and other women have come out of military service relatively unscathed, although I have to wonder, those that served in Vietnam, what kind of damage was there, what kind of scars they carry, both visible and invisible. But I was a lucky one, and my lucky number, 84. So we're going to shift gears now. It's funny when it's amazing. That was a long time ago. And when I start thinking about it, that vulnerability, that just someone could just, anyway, give me a second. So this is the point now in our service where we participate in our weekly ritual of joys and sorrows. We set aside this moment together to remember and to honor and to hold dear the joys and sorrows in each of our lives. Now, how we feel may not be the least bit obvious to those around us, but our emotions are very real and very present for each and every one of us. And because of that, we take this time each Sunday to honor those feelings. The large stones that Greg will put in the bowl, those represent the feelings that all connect all of us. They stand for the stability and the strength of the earth, which is more than strong enough to hold our collective pains, our collective joys, our loves, our angers. The earth can handle that. The water, which Greg now pours, is a life-sustaining resource that sadly is not always available to everyone. We recognize that those migrating through our desert right now without access to water. We also take a moment to honor those compassionate organizations that leave supplies of water for those migrants so that they might have a better chance at life for themselves and their children. Personally, I feel a deep anger. I feel shame at how our administration is treating its own citizens and the rest of the world. I worry that the damage being done to the environment may be irreversible or at least take decades to heal. And our relationships with our allies, how long will it take to repair that? But here, with all of you, I feel joy, I feel hope, I feel connection. And that hope helps me heal and reclaim my better self and feel hope for our country. So, those of you who wish to share your joy and sorrow with everyone, because I'll be reading those in just a minute, you can go to menti.com and enter the code. There we go. 7284-4412. That will allow me to share your joy or your sorrow with everyone here. Now, those of you who are here in Holland, if you want some help with Menti, Brian Moon is more than qualified to help you navigate that. You can include your name, too, if you wish us to know who wrote that statement of that feeling. If you're here in person and you have a joy or sorrow that you wish to recognize in just a minute, I'll be calling people forward. Just come down either aisle because you can approach the bowl from either side. There you can add smaller stones to represent your personal, your individual joy or your individual sorrow or both. We have stones in a bowl in the back for those of you who wish to do this ritual in a more private way. For the rest of us, while we proceed through this, please remain in quiet contemplation of your own feelings and to support those who choose to come forward. So, those of you who wish, please come forward now. Jose Luis. up on Menti. Oh, oops, there we go. The harp world and Tucson community lost a bright star this week with the passing of Rebecca Foreman after a valiant battle with brain cancer. Becky was a brilliant harpist, a music educator, and a friend. Our thoughts and prayers go with her and all those that clearly loved her. Oh, yes, care for Danielle Meffen's family. She's at her in-laws for a memorial service, the father of her husband. A sorrow in the memory of my elementary and high school friends who died during the Vietnam conflict by Steve Kraniak. I'm grateful for my husband, Bob McMillan's love and support. May he always love and support you. Wonderful. I read Cobalt Red a couple of days ago, and I've been feeling the frustration and shame with my world that we allow children to suffer so much in the DRC, that we can have phones and laptops. Oh, in order for us to build those devices which we all depend on at the expense of children who are doing the mining and building. I remember those friends and relatives who lost their lives or their limbs in World Wars I and II, in Vietnam, and in Iraq. Bob G. Yes. I'm also grateful for getting called for Vietnam. For not getting, thank you, I'm not getting called. FV was not getting called up. I knew what we were talking about today would have to resonate with many of the people here.
From your seats, would you join me in this old prayer for peace, Dona Nobis Pacem? We'll sing it through twice. I think most of you have heard it, and many of you know it. Bottom B, ready, 1, 2, sing. Dona nobis pacem, pacem. Dona nobis pacem.
Do you want it up? No, it's probably about right. Yeah, well, just because I can make it go a little up. There we go. So now it's something a little bit different. I was going to come up here today and tell you about my generation's experience with peace and peaceful protest and my contemplations. And I was going to share a reflection about what it was like to grow up in the 1980s and when I discovered what apartheid was. And I was going to talk about what it felt like when my friend's dad went to war and came back very, very different. And I was going to talk about the Million Man March and Occupy Wall Street and Standing Rock. And I realized something the more and more I wrote. 1 year ago, almost to this date, we did a service on peace where I introduced this song by Lisa Dosher called Peace, What Does It Take? And she had written it for World Peace Day when she wasn't really feeling great about peace. And I realized that I could write all these contemplations and it was still the same conclusion. I still feel the way Lisa expresses in this song. And she made this song free for all people. So I am instead going to share it with you again today. So we look at the first verse of Peace, What Does It Take by Lisa Dosher. And it says, what does it take to lay down my sword and shield? To not participate. Reach for the weapons that I wield. What will it take for all of these wounds to heal? For new ways of love to be revealed? And I'm not sure what it will take, because sometimes I really feel like I want to fight. And sometimes I really feel like I want to stand up and cry down the house to protect those that I love from injustice. I sure wish I knew what it takes to set down my sword. But I don't. And so I'm glad that in part 2, she reminds me of some good advice. And as a therapist, this is advice I've given people. I come from a somatic eco-psychology background, which I'm happy to tell you about another day. And I tell people all the time, and I say it in my own words, but she says, let the river flow. Let the vines grow over the steel. Let it go back to the ground. We can turn it around. Let the seeds we sow be the love we know when we allow ourselves some space to grow. Because sometimes we need to return to the earth. We need to allow ourselves the space to commune, to do what the things in the earth do when they return to the earth, which is, maybe make some fertilizer or some compost, so new things can grow. And it makes me think of these seeds that we sow through our actions and our way in the world. By the way we live, we sow seeds. The conversations we have like these today, we sow seeds. And this also appeals to my contemplation that maybe more nature and less people is probably a good thing. And maybe more nature and less people is the answer to the equation. Not just for me, but for the earth as an organism. So this leads to the third verse. And it puts forth a challenge, well, at least a challenge for me. The challenge is knowing that I am still in a state of contemplation, knowing I'm not sure I can set down my weapons. So how do I find rest? Because if you do not find rest, you have no energy to resist. If you cannot find rest, you're going to burn out. So part 3 tells us about how to find that rest. And it says, I've got peace. Feel the peace in my body. I've got peace. I know there's peace in my soul. And I do forget sometimes, but I do have that peace in my body because I need to, because I know I can't control much. But with attention and intention, I can control what I cultivate in my own soul. And peace is generally worth cultivation. So now I have three brave volunteers that have, at the last minute, agreed to sing this song with me. My sister, Ariel Milner, and our lovely president, Wendy. And Brian's going to help us out on the melody the second time through. All right. What does it take to let out my sword and shield, to not participate, reach for the weapons that I wield? What will it take for all of these wounds to heal? For new waves of love to be revealed. Oh, let the river flow, let the vines grow over the steep. Let it go back to the ground. We can turn it around. And oh, let the seeds we sow be the love we know when we allow ourselves the space to grow. I've got peace, I feel the peace in my body. I've got peace, I feel the peace in my soul. What does it take to lay down my sword and shield? Do not participate. Reach for the weapons that I wield. What does it take for all of these wounds to heal? For new ways of love to be revealed. What does it take to lay down my sword and shield? Do not participate. Reach for the weapons that I wield. What does it take to all of these wounds I know the peace for new ways of love to be revealed?
Hi, Okay. Good morning. I am 25 years old today, and when I think about war and peace, when I think about war and peace, all I can think about is the way that we have watched the state of Israel's blatant devastation in Gaza. In October 2023, I was studying in Pacific Island nations and learning from indigenous climate activists who were so patient and fiery at the same time as they worked to embed some understanding of their world in my naive mind. And then in 2024, I was back in DC protesting and attending gatherings at the DC student encampment. There was so much anger and grief about the genocide in Gaza funded by our tax dollars. There still is, and now my anger and grief bleeds everywhere. It simmers when I remember that I walk on colonized land and exploited places, because war is not just active conflict. It's the violence that persists afterward. What never leaves my mind is that US history seems to be a blueprint for Israel's horrific colonial actions in Palestine. On almost this entire continent, settlers live on ill-gotten bloodland, and what I feel in my gut is not peace. I don't feel at peace knowing that violent labor enforcement in the Congo brings cobalt for the phone I use to call my beautiful girlfriend, or that the invasion in Venezuela contributes to the gasoline in my tank. I don't feel at peace knowing that the nourishing world I've created here in Tucson rests on a history of war and displacement of O'odham and Yoeme people. So many barriers to being at ease with the world. We can go to the next slide. I read an article a couple months ago about millions of European pine trees planted throughout Palestine to cover the ruins of the Nakba forced displacement in 1948. The IDF has also destroyed over 1 million native olive trees, which Palestinians hugely rely on for the olive oil economy. This is a photo of a woman hugging an olive oil tree with an IDF soldier in the background on a machine. Recent reports are showing that the transplanted pines are dying out in a hot region they were never meant to blanket. And we can go to the next slide here. Not only is the rubble of these villages being revealed, but the olive trees are returning too, an interesting metaphor for peace. A lesson to learn here is that nature always recovers and works to restore rightness. Why can't we do the same? Are humans not part of nature too? For all of us, we are born into this history of war, this violence. It's hard to look at, and it's impossible to sit with for a long time. And yet, I feel so much hope for peace. I see so much hope in the idea of re-indigenizing, as used by Robin Wall Kimmerer in her book, Braiding Sweetgrass. I interpret this term to mean learning to live in a way that is indigenous and symbiotic with your land and ecosystem, even if your people weren't originally doing so. Unlike trees, our species can live and thrive in different corners of the planet. What I come away with is that it's not so much about whether my ethnic identity belongs to this continent, but about whether I am living in a way of true belonging with the ecosystem and with original peoples here. I'm touching on almost too many UU values here, but as we leave today, I want to reflect on transformation. Am I walking kindly on this earth, regardless of where I came from? Does my being contribute to a vision of true peace right here and now? And how can I honor the example that Palestinian people and land have shown of a love so fierce that it can outlive a century of hatred? Thanks.
Just briefly, may we sing this refrain from a Jim Scott song that's in the old gray hymnal that's many of you, I hope, will know, and if not, you'll learn it now. Nothing, I'm going to sing it twice, just so you know. If you don't know it, just kind of like smile the first verse, first time through. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough for me. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough. Nothing but peace is enough for me.
Yes, you may recognize that photo. This is the time in our service where we look to how we can contribute for what you're seeing today, what you'll see next week, and on into the future. We all have gifts to provide. We have talent, we have music, we have speech. We also look now to your financial contribution to help this church carry forward in its mission. So ushers can now go and pass the baskets.
Good morning. My name is Dennis McRitchie, and I'm the Vice President of Operations of your Board of Trustees. As such, I am the board liaison to the facilities team, ably run by Margot Garcia, and to the safety team run by Mike Horn-Mitchum, who is guarding the door for us as we speak. I want to first invite everyone to social hour after the service in Goddard Hall, which is out the double doors behind you. There will be coffee, and there may be a new passageway to Goddard because of the new fencing that I'll come back to in a bit. But the first sliding door into Goddard should be open, and you can just go into Goddard through there if the gate is closed. There will be coffee, iced tea, lemonade, snacks, and good company. Social hour food and refreshments are free for all, and donations are appreciated to cover our costs. Visitors are encouraged to take one of the red cups just inside Goddard Hall for any beverage as an opportunity for members to find you and extend a warm welcome. If you are new and want to stay in touch with us, you can fill out a guest information card in the Welcome Center in Goddard Hall or in the foyer. There is also a virtual guest information card and in the newcomer section of our website. And now for some announcements. I have an announcement from Margot Garcia, who says that the last day, today I gather, is the last day to buy a quilt. So that notification earlier that says there's a month, apparently, is not correct.
So today is the last day to buy a quilt, and they are willing to negotiate the price. So take advantage of it. Helen O'Brien wants to announce that next year, starting in September, our wonderful RE teachers will be offering something called, a program called Neighboring Faiths, a curriculum that invites middle and high school students to learn about and visit a variety of faith traditions. And last of the special announcements, well, I've got mine coming, but last of announcements from others is from Leslie Scott. We are having a watch party on Sunday, June 14th from 4 to 7 p.m. We will be projecting the live Rise Up and Sing Out concert, celebrating with celebrities including Bette Midler, Jane Fonda, Patti Smith, Rufus Wainwright, and more. This is a 90-minute concert of music and activism to celebrate the freedoms of speech, religion, press, assembly, and protest. UUCT is coordinating with Move On, the organization Move On, and Singing Resistance Tucson to have a jubilant gathering here, and will announce soon whether it's to be in the sanctuary or the social hall in Goddard. Please arrive between 4 and 4:30 for this free event. Donations and snacks will be gladly accepted. And for information, contact Leslie Scott at her email address, which is relentlessly, so relentlessly at gmail.com. And you can also reach her at 727-272-0402. So that's Sunday, June 14th, 4 to 7 p.m. And lastly, as a member of your board, I want to share that the safety grant work in terms of security cameras, fencing, and reinforcing windows, which was due to be completed today, May 31st, has in fact been completed. The vendors have been paid. There's just a couple of little tweaks that will be done next week. I think one of them might be being done right now. But we are done. We have some beautiful fencing, gates, push bars, a lot of security that has been added to the church. We have cameras that can be monitored throughout the campus. And the parking lot facing windows here have all been reinforced. So that's terrific. And we are fortunate to have been invited by the Arizona Department of Homeland Security, who funded this round. We've been invited to apply for the next round of funding for next year. And we are planning to do that. There's a little more fencing that needs to be done. We would love to have them help us pay for a lockdown room for the children in the Blackwell kitchen in the Thoreau building. We do need several more cameras. We've now seen that there's a few dead spots that could be benefited. And there's a number further reinforcing the windows may perhaps be on the chart. So we're still thinking about what we want to apply for. That will be done very soon. The application, ably done by Marie Bjork, again this time, is due June 15th. So that's all coming together. So we've just had time to take one breath after the end of this project, and now we're on to the next project. So that is basically it. Come talk to me after, or someone else who had the presence of mind to actually wear their board lanyard. I want to, if you want more information, I'll be at Social Hour if you have questions or feedback for your board. Thank you.
We are grateful for the sun and moon, the sea and earth, for I'm not looking at the words. We are grateful for the endless blessings we receive beyond what we could have conceived, for this journey that led us here and this path to follow of a love so dear. Thank you.
Click, clack,
Click,
moo.
clack, moo.
Cows,
Cows,
that type. Farmer Brown has a problem. His cows, like to type. All day long, he hears click, clack, moo. Click, clack, moo. Clickety, clack, moo. At first, he couldn't believe his ears. Cows that type? Impossible. Click, clack, moo. Click, clack, moo. Clickety, clack, moo. Then he couldn't believe his eyes. Dear Farmer Brown, the barn is very cold at night. We'd like some electric blankets. Sincerely, the cows. It was bad enough that the cows had found the old typewriter in the barn. Now they wanted electric blankets. No way, said Farmer Brown. No electric blankets. So cows went on strike. They left a note on the barn door. Sorry, we're closed. No milk today. No milk today, cried Farmer Brown. In the background, he heard the cows busy at work. Click, clack, moo. Click, clack, moo. Clickety, clack, moo. The next day, he got another note. Dear Farmer Brown, the hens are cold too. They'd like electric blankets. Sincerely, the cows. The cows were growing impatient with the farmer. They left a new note on the barn door. Closed. No milk, eggs, it read. No eggs, cried Farmer Brown. In the background, he heard them. Click, clack, moo. Click, clack, moo. Clickety, clack, moo. Cows that type, hens on strike. Whoever heard of such a thing? How can I run a farm with no milk and no eggs? Farmer Brown was furious. Farmer Brown got out his own typewriter. Dear cows and hens, there will be no electric blankets. Your cows and hens. I demand milk and eggs. Sincerely, Farmer Brown. The duck was a neutral party, so he brought the ultimatum to the cows. The cows held an emergency meeting. All the animals gathered around the barn to snoop, but none of them could understand moo. All night long, Farmer Brown waited for an answer. Duck knocked on the door early the next morning. He handed Farmer Brown a note. Dear Farmer Brown, we will exchange our typewriter for electric blankets. Leave them outside the barn door, and we will send Duck over with the typewriter. Sincerely, the cows. Farmer Brown decided this was a good deal. He left the blankets next to the barn door and waited for Duck to come with the typewriter. The next morning, he got a note. Dear Farmer Brown, the pond is quite boring. We'd like a diving board. Sincerely, the ducks. Click, clack, quack. Click, clack, quack. Clickety, clack, quack.
Today for our chalice extinguishing, I will first read it in my mother's language, Chinese, and then we can read it together in English. You don't have to read with me for this part. Yeah. 每周我们都聚在这个美丽的地方，寻求和平。 每周文字与音乐提供并庆祝和平，为了将其住在我们心中。现在将你在此处找到的安宁带入世界，让我们重燃信仰，激励行动，让我们成为世界渴望的和平使者。作为和平使者，让我们在世界中与内心中寻找我们渴望的平安。平安的去吧，让世人得和好，让内心得安宁。And we can read this together. Every week, we gather in this beautiful space to find peace. Each week, words of music offer and celebrate peace, with the hope of instilling it inside us. Now, take the peace that you have found here back out into the world. Be renewed in our faith and inspired to act. Let us be the peacemakers that the world aches for. And by being peacemakers, let us find the peace we long for, both out in the world and within ourselves. Go in peace, make peace, be at peace.